So I was asked to make a video about, I guess, my interpretation of firearm safety. Somebody I know went to the range that is beginning their journey in shooting and firearm handling and concealed carry and stuff like that. They know all the fundamentals and the basics and stuff like that. And they took a coworker with them, and there was some gun handling and gun safety practice that was not being very well represented out there, i.e. There was, muzzling, sweeping, trigger, finger on the trigger when they're not shooting, just, the basics. So I was asked to put my own little spin on it in plain English, to kind of help the everyday person out that is beginning their journey into learning how to use firearms safely. And a disclaimer is that I am not an instructor. I am just an everyday guy that was raised around firearms my entire, as long as I can remember when I was a kid. It's just, we always handled firearms. We hunt. We always used them on a daily basis around the farm. So it was an everyday part of life to use firearms. So as a kid, I was exposed really early to handling firearms. So when you talk about firearm safety, you often hear about the big four. Colonel Jeff Cooper was a gentleman that developed a lot of things that we still use in the industry, or still that people use in the gun industry, shooting sports, hunting, and USPSA, all that kind of stuff, IDPA, 3-gun, it covers any and all bases as far as firearm safety. So Colonel Jeff Cooper's 4 rules are treat every firearm as if they're loaded at all times. So number 1, treat every gun as if it is loaded. So what does that tell us? Is this gun loaded? Do you know if this gun is loaded? It's got a magazine in there, so yes, it has a magazine. Is this gun unloaded now? There is no magazine in the gun. Let's find out. A round comes out. So, even when the gun has no magazine, there is still a possibility of there being a bullet in the chamber. And so that's why you visually verify and manually verify by sticking your finger in there and saying there is no bullet in that chamber. And if you have somebody with you, have them also verify that the gun is clear. And this is something that you do before you hand a gun to somebody else. You never hand anybody a loaded gun. So you clear the gun and you both verify. And if you're alone, what I do is gun is clear, gun is clear, gun is clear. And then you can rack it 3 or 4 times and make sure that nothing comes out. Now the gun is clear. So without a magazine in there, the gun can still fire and discharge a round. So treat every firearm as if it is loaded all the time. If somebody goes to hand you a firearm, you say, will you please clear the firearm for me? Show me the gun is clear before you hand me the gun. And be adamant about this. So number 2 would be don't point the gun at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy. That means don't point the gun at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy. Oftentimes, when you see people that are new to firearms, the gun is clear, they will, and I don't like even doing this now, even though I know the gun is clear, I still don't like it. People new to gun handling will sweep their self when they're drawing or just manipulating the gun, or after they shoot. They'll be sitting here talking to you like this, and they may have the gun inadvertently pointed at you or your leg or something, just not very cognizant of where the muzzle is. No matter how clear the gun is, no matter what condition, you never point the gun at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy. So there's a lot of terms for this. I've heard people call it lasering. You can imagine that if the gun had a laser beam coming out of the barrel, that anything that it comes in contact with, say if it crossed your fingers, it would cut your fingers off. If you lasered your leg, your leg would fall off. It just keeps you mindful. Another term is flagging, where you flag somebody. It's just a term for, pointing a gun at something you're not willing to kill or destroy. Also, there is, I'm sure there's a lot of other terms, muzzling somebody. So never point the gun at anything that you are not willing to kill or destroy. So if we're sitting here like this and say you're right here, I would never point the gun at you in any way. If we're standing here talking, the gun is pointed down at the ground or in the air, or if we're in a place where there's a 360 rule, you make sure, and a 360 rule is if you're at the range. I don't mean to chase rabbits here, but you imagine that there's a 360 degrees all over. Say if you're facing down range, you put your arms out perfectly straight beside you, extend it out. You do not fire past that angle back. So you have 180 degrees that you can fire at. So depending on where you're at is going to be, the situation dictates every time, whenever it comes to do not point the gun at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy. Because there could be situations where if you hold the gun like this, you could be pointing the gun at somebody down range, or it just depends. So a safe practice is to always know where the gun is going to be pointed. So you can either have it pointed down at the ground, and if we're standing here talking, if I wanted to show you something on this side of the gun, I would turn it up and then like this. So it's like the gun is on a gimbal. Your hand and your wrist is the gimbal. So you always have this right here in mind, that you never point the gun at anything that you don't want to kill or destroy. So, and that's a big one that I see people fail at a lot is, they're either, pointing the gun at themselves during a draw, or if they're manipulating the gun. The real bad one that I've seen is whenever people drop the magazine, they'll do something like this, or they'll do something like this. I've seen some crazy stuff happen, people that are new to guns. So anytime you're manipulating a gun, no matter what, just even if it feels awkward, if there's nobody this way and this is a safe direction, then you can load your magazine and unload it, whatever you got to do. Just know where that gun is pointed all the time. Number 3, keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Never put your finger on this trigger until you know that you are ready to fire the firearm. And that's another big one that people fail at a lot. Whenever they shoot a string, they come back and their finger is still on the trigger. And that is so dangerous. So very dangerous. Always keep your finger straight on any firearm. It could be a rifle, a shotgun, modern sporting rifle. It could be anything, a pistol, revolver, it doesn't matter. Finger always straight until you're ready to shoot. This is a skill that you just have to work on over time, and just know that if your finger is on this trigger and you get bumped, or you're not paying attention and you're slowly, inadvertently adding pressure to the trigger, boom, gun goes off. And it's kind of funny, I'm sure some of you have seen